At our anniversary dinner, my wife said she needed space, and I was still trying to figure out what that even meant when I watched her walk out of the restaurant with my best friend. What I learned afterward flipped my entire world upside down. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be the guy posting a story like this, but after everything blew up, I realized I needed to get it off my chest somewhere people actually listen. So buckle up, because this is the night everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my friendships and myself collapsed all at once, and it all started with a single sentence I never saw coming. I remember the exact moment the air shifted between us, the way the candlelight flickered across her face at that table like someone had turned the dimmer down on purpose, making everything look softer and more distant, like she wasn't even sitting across from me but in some parallel place I couldn't reach. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 6, and the anniversary dinner was supposed to be a moment to breathe and reconnect after months of stress from work, family obligations and the general grind of life, but instead it became the setting for the most surreal conversation of my life. She wasn't nervous, that was the weirdest thing. She wasn't tapping her fork or fumbling her napkin the way she did when she had something uncomfortable to say. She was calm, almost rehearsed. "I think I need some space," she said, and her voice was steady, too steady, like she wasn't dropping a bomb on our marriage but announcing a scheduling conflict. I blinked at her, waiting for the rest, waiting for the laugh, the explanation, the anything that made the words make sense. But she just sat there looking at me with this soft, detached expression, like she was comforting me for a decision she'd already made weeks ago. I asked her what she meant, asked if she was unhappy, if something had happened, if she felt neglected or overwhelmed, if I had done something wrong, but she didn't answer directly. She kept using vague therapy words like emotional clarity and personal realignment, phrases that didn't sound like her but sounded exactly like something she had practiced in the mirror. I could feel something unraveling inside me, something tight and fragile, but I kept my voice calm because I still thought this was a conversation, something fixable, something we could work through like every other challenge we'd faced. But then she sighed, reached for her bag and said she needed some air. Nothing dramatic, no tears, no trembling, just a woman who had already stepped out of the marriage emotionally and was now physically following through. I told her I'd walk with her, but she shook her head and said she needed to be alone, and I believed her. That's the worst part, I believed her. I watched her walk toward the exit, her hand brushing her hair back like she was in a movie scene, and I told myself to give her space, to not crowd her, to let her breathe, but something in my gut tightened as she reached the door. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was 8 years of knowing her better than anyone else. Maybe it was the way she pulled out her phone before she even stepped outside, her shoulders lifting like she was finally free of some weight. A few minutes passed, maybe 5, maybe 10, I was too nauseous to check, before I couldn't sit there any longer. I tossed some cash on the table and stepped outside to find her. The cold hit me first, then the sight hit me harder, my wife standing on the sidewalk, not alone, not breathing, not thinking but laughing. Laughing with someone she wasn't supposed to be laughing with. My best friend Mark. The man I'd known since I was 12, the guy who stood next to me at my wedding, the guy I trusted more than anyone, not sharing my last name. They didn't see me at first. They were too close, too comfortable, too familiar. He had his hand on her arm, the way he used to grab mine when he joked around, but the intimacy was different, charged, wrong. She was smiling at him in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months, maybe longer. A slow, private smile, a smile that meant something. I froze, my brain stopped, my lungs forgot how to work. I wasn't watching two people having a friendly talk. I was watching chemistry, connection, the kind of silent communication two people build when they share secrets. She finally noticed me and her smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. Mark turned around a second later, his face draining of color when he realized I'd seen them. But what happened next was what truly destroyed me. She didn't look guilty, she looked annoyed. Annoyed that I'd stepped outside. Annoyed that I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to see yet. Annoyed that I hadn't stayed in the restaurant like a good oblivious husband. She didn't reach for me. She didn't explain. She didn't stammer. She just looked caught in a moment she thought she'd timed better. "I told you I needed space," she said, like that sentence explained everything. Mark tried to speak but she cut him a subtle look that shut him up immediately. And in that instant something clicked inside me. Not a spark of rage but the slow, painful understanding that this wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't a moment of confusion. This was a plan. A transition. A replacement already in progress. I asked her if this was what she'd meant by space. She didn't answer. She didn't deny it either. She just looked away, the way people look away when the truth is too ugly to dress up. My chest tightened, not from heartbreak, but from humiliation. Humiliation at the idea that the two people I trusted most might have been crossing lines behind my back. I asked Mark how long this had been going on, and he muttered something about timing, about miscommunication, about things being complicated, like he was auditioning for a soap opera. I felt sick, literally sick, the kind of nausea that starts deep in your stomach and spreads through your whole body until you're shaking. I walked away before I could say something violent or pathetic. I didn't even hear what they yelled after me because everything went muted, like my brain went into survival mode and shut out the noise. I drove home in a fog, replaying the dinner, the walkout, the sidewalk scene, trying to piece together the timeline my heart didn't want to know. And that night was just the start. The lies, the betrayal, the months of secrets, the real reason she wanted space. It all came out piece by piece, each part uglier than the last. And what I ended up discovering later didn't just break my marriage. It exposed the people I thought I knew and forced me into a version of myself I never imagined I'd have to become. That night outside the restaurant wasn't the end. It was the opening shot in a war I didn't know I'd been drafted into. And trust me, Reddit, what came next made that sidewalk scene feel like a warm-up. What happened after that night felt like falling down a staircase in the dark. Every step hurt. Every landing was worse than the last, and I never knew how far I still had left to fall. When I got home, the house felt alien, like someone had swapped the air out for something colder and heavier, and all the familiar things, our framed anniversary photos, the blankets she loved, the little plant she named after some YouTuber, felt like props in a life that wasn't real anymore. I sat on the couch staring at nothing, trying to make sense of a marriage that had apparently ended long before that dinner, and the sickest part was realizing I'd been the only one still committed while the two people I trusted most were already halfway out the door together. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight, and at some point around 4 a.m. I drove to the gym just to exhaust myself. But when I opened the locker I kept my stuff in, I found something that made my knees go weak. Her spare key sitting on top of my gym bag. That key wasn't supposed to be there. She hadn't been to my gym in months. I stared at it for a long time until the obvious horrifying possibility clicked. Did she meet him here? Did they use this place as their hideout while I was working or running errands? I felt physically ill thinking about the two of them laughing in the parking lot, sneaking glances at each other while I was cluelessly going about my routine. On the drive home I replayed every recent weird interaction, every late night at her office, every time Mark bailed on our plans last minute, and suddenly the timeline wasn't fragmented anymore. It connected in one clear gut-wrenching picture. But nothing prepared me for the next morning when she finally came home. She walked in around 9 a.m. like nothing catastrophic had happened, her hair tied up, her expression oddly blank, like she had rehearsed a calm persona in her car before stepping inside. She didn't ask where I'd gone, didn't ask if I was okay, didn't even flinch when she noticed the untouched dinner bag still sitting on the counter. She just said, "We should talk," in that same therapist-approved tone she used the night before. I asked her how long she'd been seeing Mark. She denied it instantly, too instantly, the kind of reflex denial that screams guilt. She said they were just talking, that he was helping her through emotional stuff she felt she couldn't bring to me, and that what I saw outside the restaurant was bad timing. I told her I wasn't stupid. Her face tightened like she wasn't expecting me to push, like I was supposed to fold and accept the lie because confronting her wasn't part of her plan. She said she didn't want to hurt me, and I actually laughed, a real bitter laugh, because if she didn't want to hurt me she wouldn't have chosen my best friend as her emotional support boyfriend. I told her I wanted the truth. She told me I was creating narratives. I told her I wanted her phone. She told me I needed to respect boundaries. The phrase made something snap inside me. Respect boundaries? From the person who walked out on our anniversary dinner to flirt with my best friend on the sidewalk. I told her if she didn't hand over her phone, the conversation was over. She didn't, so I walked away. 2 hours later I got a text from Mark. "We should talk, man." No apology, no explanation, no guilt, just "we should talk." That told me everything I needed to know. I didn't reply. Instead I called my sister, the only person with actual common sense in my life, and asked if I could come over. She didn't ask questions, she just said yes. When I got to her place, I broke down in a way I didn't think I was capable of. Not loud sobbing, just this quiet, pathetic, broken shaking that comes from realizing your foundation wasn't a foundation at all, just wet sand, pretending to be something solid. She made coffee, sat next to me, and said the thing nobody else had the guts to say. She checked out months ago, and he's a snake. Hearing someone else say it made it real. My sister told me I needed to get distance, call a lawyer and figure out my next steps before emotions made me do something stupid. So I went home, grabbed clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and a few essentials, and left my wife in the house we'd built together, because being there felt like standing in a graveyard of my own delusions. Over the next few days, the truth started coming out like a dam breaking. It started with a message from a coworker of hers, a woman I barely knew, who said she thought I deserved to know what's been going on. My hands shook opening the files she sent. Screenshots, photos, voice notes, months of them. Not just her and Mark talking, but her venting to coworkers, complaining about me, telling people she felt alive again with him, saying I didn't excite her anymore, saying Mark understood her on a deeper level, saying she wanted to transition away from the marriage peacefully, meaning she wanted to line everything up with him before detonating us. And the worst part, the restaurant fight wasn't a spontaneous moment of truth, it was the planned rollout. She had actually told her coworkers she was going to soft launch the separation on our anniversary, because the symbolism would help her make peace with the decision. A soft launch of our marriage ending. On the day we were supposed to celebrate choosing each other. I stared at my phone for hours, numb. Then the real bomb dropped. In several messages, she told people she and Mark had kissed months ago. Months. She said she didn't want to call it cheating, because they had feelings and needed clarity. But she also said she felt guilty every time I kissed her afterward, because she wished it were Mark instead. I don't know how long I sat there replaying those lines, but at some point my sister walked in. took the phone out of my hand, and told me I needed to stop torturing myself. But it wasn't just messages, it was money. Bank statements, receipts. She had been meeting him at coffee shops, bars, parks, places we used to go together, while telling me she was working late. She had bought him gifts, she had picked up tabs, she had even paid for a hotel room once, claiming it was for a solo mental health recharge night. And while all this was happening, he was still playing basketball with me every Sunday, like nothing was wrong. Still joking with me, still asking about my marriage so he could gather intel, still telling me I was lucky to have her. The gut punch wasn't just the affair, it was the double life, the acting, the manipulation, the way they orchestrated everything like I was a background character in my own damn marriage. By day 3, I had stopped shaking and started planning. I met with a divorce lawyer, I secured my finances, I moved my things to my sister's house permanently, I blocked Mark on everything, and then I sent my wife a simple message. I know everything, we're done. She called me 8 times in a row. I didn't pick up. She texted paragraphs of excuses, how she didn't want to hurt me, how she didn't know what she wanted, how she felt confused, how her emotions were complicated, how she didn't intend for things to go this far. Not once did she say she was sorry. Not once did she acknowledge how deep the betrayal went. Not once did she admit what she did was wrong. Instead, she asked if we could talk things out when she got home. I didn't respond. The next day her mom called me crying, saying my wife was a mess and I should fight for the marriage. I told her I'd been fighting alone for a long time and I was tired. There was a long silence before she whispered, "I'm so sorry, honey," like she knew something but didn't want to be the one to say it out loud. And then 2 days later my wife finally told me the thing I'd already figured out. She wanted to officially separate. Not because she wanted to fix herself. Not because she wanted to reflect. But because she wanted to explore where things might go with Mark. That's when something inside me shut off. Permanently. Because you can forgive a mistake, but you don't forgive a plan. And hers had been in motion for months. But as awful as those days were, I had no idea the biggest twist was still coming. Not from her, not from him, but from someone completely unexpected who reached out with information that blew the entire situation wide open and revealed a secret neither of them ever wanted me to know. I thought the worst was behind me. That finding out about the affair and ending the marriage was the peak of the pain, but life has this sick talent for showing you that the real hit always comes after you think you've survived the first one. 3 days after my wife told me she wanted to see where things might go with Mark, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Mark's younger sister Lily. She and I were never close, but we were friendly enough back in the day, and she had no reason to lie to me or protect my wife. Her first message was simple, "Can we talk? It's about Mark." My stomach dropped instantly. I called her, and she answered on the first ring, her voice shaky like she'd been debating this for hours. She told me she didn't know how much I already knew, and when I said I knew about the affair she let out a breath that wasn't relief so much as dread. "Okay," she said, "then you need to know the rest." What she said next felt like being punched repeatedly in the same wound until I couldn't breathe. She said Mark had a pattern, one she and her family had tried to address for years. He didn't just cross boundaries, he deliberately went after women who belonged to people he envied. And the reason he went after my wife, it wasn't because he loved her or felt some deep emotional bond. It was because of me. She told me that ever since high school Mark had been competing with me quietly, privately, in ways I never noticed because I thought we were friends. Every time I got a girlfriend he'd flirt with her. Every time I succeeded at something, jobs, promotions, relationships, he'd spiral, convinced he was being left behind. And apparently when I married my wife that was the thing that finally made him snap. He had told his sister more than once that he deserved someone like her, that I didn't appreciate what I had, and that life wasn't fair because I always ended up with everything good. Hearing those words hit me harder than anything my wife had done, because betrayal from a partner stings, but betrayal from someone you trusted like a brother, that sits in your bones in a way you can't shake off. But Lily wasn't finished. She told me she didn't know how to say the next part, that she was sorry in advance, that she had debated calling me for weeks, and then she said the thing that made the world tilt. Mark and my wife hadn't started talking months ago like she claimed. They had been involved for almost a year, a full year, long before the restaurant, long before her needing space, long before her emotional distance became obvious, and worst of all, they didn't meet spontaneously. They were introduced by someone I trusted even more than Mark, her co-worker, the one who had sent me the messages to help. The one who made herself look like the hero by exposing the truth. Turns out she wasn't helping me, she was covering herself. Because she was the one who set them up in the first place. According to Lily, my wife had been venting about feeling bored in the marriage, feeling like we had fallen into a routine, feeling like she wanted something exciting, and instead of advising her to fix the marriage or communicate, that coworker encouraged her to explore her feelings for Mark, even going so far as to arrange accidental meetups when my wife needed a ride home, or wanted company after work. Those late nights at the office, they weren't work, they were dates. Those weekend mental health breaks, they weren't self-care, they were hotel rooms. The lies weren't just frequent, they were architectural, layered, designed, rehearsed. And that's when Lily hesitated, her voice catching before telling me the part that nearly made me drop the phone. My wife had been planning to leave me long before the anniversary dinner. The dinner wasn't a soft launch. It was supposed to be the hard launch, the end. The final break, the symbolic closure. They planned it together. She told multiple people she was going to end things that night. She told them she wanted to be free to start fresh with Mark. And the only reason she didn't officially break things off at dinner, because she froze. She chickened out. She didn't go through with the full script. So she used the space excuse instead. Watching her walk out of the restaurant with him was not a coincidence. He was there waiting. They had coordinated it. That realization hit me like a freight train because it meant nothing about that night was spontaneous. No guilt, no confusion, no moral struggle. It was a rehearsed performance. A transition from wife to ex-wife, from best friend to boyfriend. A handoff, a passing of the torch. Except the torch was me. My sister found me sitting on the floor of her guest room staring at the wall, my phone still in my hand, my mind looping the same thoughts over and over like a scratched record. She helped me sit up, got me water and told me I needed to stop blaming myself, that people like them don't betray you because you're flawed, they betray you because they are. But the hits didn't stop there. 2 days later I got a call from my soon-to-be ex-wife. She sounded frantic, her voice tight, panicked, nothing like the calm, curated tone she had used before. At first I thought she wanted to fight or negotiate or manipulate the narrative again. But no, she wanted something. Something big, something ugly. She said she needed to talk about our finances. Specifically, she wanted access to our joint account, the one we had barely touched since separating. I asked why. She dodged the question. I pressed again. She dodged again. Finally, after 5 minutes of deflection, she said the quiet part out loud. Mark and I are going through a rough patch and I need stability right now. Stability, that's the word she used. Stability. As if she didn't blow up the stability we had. As if she didn't choose chaos. As if I owed her a safety net after she set mine on fire. I told her no. She got angry. Not sad. Not remorseful. Angry. She said I was being petty. She said I was punishing her. She said I should show compassion. Then she said the line that made me hang up mid-sentence. If you ever loved me, you'd help me. That's when the last piece clicked. She didn't miss me. She didn't regret losing me. She didn't want the marriage back. She wanted the lifestyle, the security, the financial cushion. She wanted me to fund her new relationship because it was already falling apart. And here's the irony. The moment she realized I wasn't her backup plan, she finally started to unravel. Over the next week I got texts ranging from guilt trips to nostalgia bombs to subtle insults to outright begging. One night she wrote, "I don't know who I am without you." The next morning she wrote, "You never cared about me the way Mark does." That afternoon she wrote, "I'm sorry, can we please talk?" And that night she wrote, "You ruined everything." 4 contradictions in 24 hours. That's not love. That's panic. Then the twist of all twists hit. A message from someone I didn't even know existed. A woman named Clara. Mark's actual girlfriend. Not ex, not hookup. Girlfriend. Long term. She sent screenshots, dates, receipts, photos. And in one brutal message she wrote, "I thought he was cheating on me with random girls. I didn't know he was having an affair with a married woman. I'm sorry you had to find out like this." And just like that, the truth became undeniable. My wife wasn't the only one being played. Mark wasn't some soulmate she left me for. He was a serial cheater, who treated relationships like games, and people like trophies. She blew up our marriage for a man who wasn't even loyal to her. And the moment she realized that, the moment she learned he had a whole other relationship running parallel to their affair, she looked at me, not as the husband she betrayed, but as the stability she lost. And that's when I realized the most painful truth of all. She didn't leave me for a better man. She left me for a worse one. And she thought I'd still be waiting in the background when it all blew up. But I wasn't. And that's when the real fallout began. The fallout that ended with her losing far more than a marriage. Because the universe wasn't even close to done with her yet. The universe really does have a twisted sense of timing. Because right when I thought I finally had a grip on everything, Mark's manipulation, my wife's betrayal, the secret timelines, the hidden girlfriend, life decided to throw one more curveball at me, the kind that doesn't just knock you down but forces you to confront who you are when everything familiar has burned away. About a week after hearing from Clara, I got an email from HR at my wife's company asking if I was available for a brief conversation regarding an ongoing internal matter, and that phrasing alone sent a chill down my spine because I wasn't involved in anything related to her job, hadn't contacted anyone, hadn't made accusations, hadn't gone looking for payback, but apparently somebody else had gone looking for answers. The email invited me to a Zoom call, and out of morbid curiosity, I agreed. When the meeting started, it was two HR reps with stiff expressions and a legal tone that made the conversation feel like an interrogation. They asked if I knew anything about inappropriate conduct between my wife and a colleague, and I swear I felt my soul leave my body because as messy as everything had been, I wasn't expecting her workplace to be part of the fallout. I told them I wasn't aware of the details, only that we were separating due to infidelity, and that I had no intention of involving myself in her professional life. That's when one of the reps said, "We understand, but multiple staff members have come forward with information regarding your wife and a fellow employee. We were hoping for clarification." My heart sank. I asked who the colleague was, but they said they couldn't reveal names. They asked if I could confirm whether she and this colleague had been meeting outside of work, and when I answered honestly that yes, she had, one of the reps sighed in a way that told me this was bigger than just office gossip. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the blank Zoom screen, trying to piece together what new disaster was brewing. I didn't have to wonder long. That same night, my sister knocked on my door holding her phone like it had personally betrayed her. "You need to see this," she said, and showed me a private Facebook group screenshot someone had sent her, a local community gossip page, where people dropped anonymous tea about workplace scandals, relationship drama, neighborhood feuds, anything juicy enough to share. And right there, in bold text, was a post. "Anyone hear about the manager at Greenpoint Marketing, who got suspended for hooking up with a coworker? Heard the wife found out and left him." The comments were even worse, people speculating, coworkers chiming in anonymously, someone claiming the affair had disrupted team dynamics, someone else saying the other guy was also sleeping with someone else in the office, creating a triangle. It didn't take a genius to realize the post was about her. The suspension part made my jaw drop. She'd been suspended. She hadn't said a word to me, probably because she didn't want me to know she was facing consequences, or because she thought she could spin it to her advantage later by playing the victim. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what happened the next morning, when she showed up at my sister's house unannounced. She looked exhausted, hair disheveled, makeup smudged like she had spent the whole night crying or panicking or both. She asked if we could talk privately, and even though I didn't owe her a single second of my time, I agreed because I wanted answers. She sat on the edge of the couch, wringing her hands, and when she spoke her voice cracked. "I'm in trouble," she said. "Not I'm sorry, not I regret what I did, not I hurt you, just I'm in trouble." She told me HR had evidence, messages, witness statements, photos from coworkers, and they were deciding whether to terminate her. She said Mark stopped answering her texts, that he was going through a lot, which was obviously code for he's running from responsibility again. Then she said something that made me physically recoil. "Can you vouch for me?" I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. She continued, "If they reach out again, can you soften the details? Maybe say we were already separated, or that things were complicated." I laughed, loudly, bitterly. I asked her why the hell I would help her cover up the affair that destroyed our marriage. She said she didn't want to lose her job. I said, "You should have thought about that before sleeping with a coworker and my best friend at the same time." She snapped that she wasn't sleeping with them at the same time, as if the scheduling made it morally acceptable. She started crying, the kind of messy crying she never did around Mark, the kind she had reserved only for situations where she needed me to fix something for her. I didn't say anything, I just watched her unravel. Then she grabbed my hand like she used to when she wanted something big and whispered, "Please, I need you. I don't have anyone else." And she was right, she didn't, because she burned every bridge she had relied on for comfort. I pulled my hand away and told her I wasn't going to lie for her, not to her job, not to her friends, not to myself. She stormed out after that, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I didn't pick it up, I let it stay there on the floor like a final symbol of everything that had shattered. But the story didn't end with her job. The next day Clara messaged again. "I thought you should know," she wrote. "Mark's been telling people you were abusive." My blood ran cold. She sent screenshots of him spinning a narrative where I was the controlling, jealous husband who pushed his wife away. He said they didn't cheat, that she came to him crying about how mistreated she felt, and he supported her. He painted himself as the hero. I was the villain. I was stunned, but Clara kept going. She sent more messages where he bragged to a friend that he finally won, that he'd proved he was the better man, that he took what I didn't appreciate. That line almost made me throw my phone. He hadn't loved her. He hadn't wanted her for a future. He had wanted to win. He had wanted to beat me. I had been competing in a race I never entered. But karma wasn't done with them. 2 days later, a mutual friend messaged me a picture. Mark and my wife in a screaming match in a parking lot. She was crying. He was yelling. People were staring. A full public meltdown. Apparently Mark had not only cheated on his girlfriend and on me, he had cheated on my wife too, with a third woman, one neither of us knew. A woman from his gym. My wife had finally realized the truth. She had left a loyal husband for a man who didn't value anyone. And when she confronted him, he told her she was a placeholder, that he never promised exclusivity, and that she took things too seriously. She tried to hit him. He walked away laughing. She collapsed on the sidewalk. Someone had recorded the whole thing, and because karma is fair when it wants to be, it went viral locally. A clip titled "Girl Finds Out She's Not the Only Side Piece" started spreading across group chats, neighborhood pages, even TikTok. Her face wasn't fully visible, but the people who knew her recognized her instantly. She called me that night. I didn't answer. She texted me paragraphs blaming me, blaming him, blaming her coworker, blaming the universe, blaming everyone except the one person responsible, herself. Then she wrote a line that made everything click into final place. I chose wrong. That was the first honest thing she'd said in months. But even then, it wasn't about loving me. It was about losing the future she thought she was upgrading to. And as all of this chaos played out, I felt something I hadn't felt since the night outside the restaurant. Peace. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't the one breaking. She was. For the first time in months I wasn't the one begging for clarity. She was. For the first time in months I wasn't the backup plan. I was gone. And the world was finally showing her the truth she tried to hide behind lies, excuses and fantasies. You don't get to destroy someone who loved you and walk away clean. Not forever. Not without the universe cashing its check eventually. And the check she wrote with her betrayal finally came due. When the dust finally started to settle, or at least when I thought it did, life decided to test me one more time. Because apparently surviving a betrayal from my wife, my best friend, and half the people I thought cared about me wasn't enough. The real closure didn't hit in one moment, but in a slow accumulating wave of realizations that built on top of each other, until they reshaped the way I saw everything from my past, to my relationships, to the version of myself I had been holding on to without even realizing it. After the parking lot meltdown went viral, and after Clara exposed Mark's lies to basically everyone who mattered in his life, both he and my ex-wife disappeared from my world for a moment, like two chaotic storms moving just far enough away that I could hear myself think again. I spent a lot of time in those weeks rebuilding emotionally, mentally, financially and physically. I hit the gym harder than ever, not because I wanted revenge but because I needed a place where my brain shut up and my body took over. I spent long nights sitting on my sister's balcony thinking about all the things I'd ignored for years, the little red flags in my friendship with Mark, the moments my wife seemed to drift, the ways I'd accepted crumbs because I thought love meant being endlessly patient. And in those moments of reflection I realized something I never expected to admit. The version of myself I had been during my marriage wasn't the real me. It was the version molded by wanting to keep peace, wanting to be enough, wanting to avoid conflict so badly that I ignored the way conflict was growing behind my back anyway. But even as I was growing, healing and learning, the universe wasn't done tying off loose ends. One morning a month after that parking lot video blew up, I got a letter from my lawyer. My ex-wife had finally filed for divorce officially, which was expected, but she had also made a request that almost made me laugh out loud. She wanted spousal support. Spousal support. From me. The man she cheated on. The man she humiliated. The man she tried to manipulate into covering for her job scandal. The man she left for someone who didn't even want her. My lawyer and I went over her claims, and it became clear she was trying to paint herself as financially devastated and emotionally manipulated, claiming that the separation was mutual, that she had fallen behind due to mental health stress, and that she needed assistance adjusting to her new situation. But life, karma, or whatever force runs this chaotic simulation had other plans, because right around the time she filed, her job concluded its investigation and made its decision. She was fired. Not suspended, not put on leave, fired. And the reason? Inappropriate relationship with a subordinate coworker, information I didn't even know about. Turns out Mark wasn't the only one she'd crossed boundaries with. That coworker who originally helped expose the affair had been covering for her out of guilt, because she'd been part of the mess too. And that firing nuked her spousal support request instantly. In our state, cheating that directly causes financial harm to the marriage can void claims to alimony, and her termination letter spelled that out in black ink. My lawyer said it was one of the cleanest slam dunk denials he'd seen in years. When she learned her request was denied, she sent me a long email calling me heartless and accusing me of abandoning her in her darkest time. But even as I read it, I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just distance, like I was watching someone I used to know drown in a pool she built herself. But while her professional life burned down, Mark's fallout was almost poetic. Clara messaged me updates occasionally, not because she wanted gossip, but because she felt I deserved the truth. After being exposed for juggling multiple women, lying constantly and sabotaging my marriage, he lost more than just relationships. He lost friends, his job, his reputation. Apparently a few months before all of this, he had been recommended for a leadership position at his company. But once word spread about his behavior, they revoked the recommendation, citing concerns about professionalism. And then the cherry on top, his long-term girlfriend, Clara, pressed charges against him for fraud and stealing money from her shared account. Apparently he had been using her money to fund dates with the other women, including my wife. It was like the universe lined up every decision he had made in the last year and flipped them over one by one until each one smacked him across the face. Meanwhile, I was slowly reclaiming myself. I started therapy not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I could have been so blind to the cracks forming right under my feet. My therapist said something that stuck with me more than anything else. You weren't blind, you were loyal. And that hit in a way I can't explain. Because loyalty is a beautiful thing when shared, but when you're the only one offering it, it becomes a weapon used against you. The divorce process moved forward quickly after that. She tried a few more manipulative tricks, crying in mediation, acting confused about the timeline, rewriting the history of our marriage in ways that would have been laughable if they weren't so insulting. But eventually even she seemed to understand the battle was over. The last time I saw her was in the courthouse hallway. She looked smaller, diminished, like someone who had aged 5 years in 5 months. She wouldn't look me in the eyes at first, but when she finally did, her voice cracked as she whispered, "I miss you." I didn't say it out loud, but I realized I didn't miss her. Not even a little. I missed who I thought she was. I missed the version of her I fell in love with. But that version was gone long before the anniversary dinner. Maybe she never truly existed. The divorce was finalized that afternoon. 6 years together, gone with a signature. But it didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. A week later, my sister, her husband, and a couple of friends dragged me out for drinks to celebrate my rebirth, as they put it. I hadn't laughed that hard in months. And somewhere between my second beer and the bar's terrible playlist, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because she was gone, but because I was finally free from the version of myself that tolerated being undervalued for so long. The morning after that celebration, I woke up to a long message from Clara, the last one she said she'd ever send. She wrote, "You didn't deserve what happened to you. But I hope you know this, you came out of this with your integrity." They came out with nothing. That message didn't heal me, but it solidified something I already knew. I won by walking away. I won by rebuilding. I won by not becoming like them, and slowly life started moving forward. I got a promotion at work, joined a hiking group, adopted a dog, reconnected with people I had drifted away from, and every step felt like another piece of myself clicking back into place. As for my ex-wife and Mark, last I heard, they weren't together anymore. In fact, they barely speak. She's living in a small apartment across town, working a low-paying job she hates. He's couch surfing, trying to rebuild a reputation he never deserved in the first place. The two people who set fire to my life ended up standing in the ashes together, but only long enough to realize neither of them knew how to build anything. Meanwhile, I rebuilt myself from scratch, and I built something better, stronger, calmer, and for the first time in a long time, something finally made sense. Sometimes the universe lets people betray you so you can see who they really were, and who you're meant to become without them. And me, I became someone I'm finally proud of. Someone whole, someone healed. Someone who knows damn well never to set himself on fire, just to keep someone else warm. The marriage is over. The heartbreak is over. The betrayal is over. And this is just the beginning. And that's how the whole mess finally came full circle. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me through the chaos. Life has a way of burning down what no longer serves you, even when it hurts like hell. I'm moving forward now, stronger, clearer, and done with anyone who can't match the loyalty I give. Until next time, Reddit.